Hi everyone and welcome. It's great to see so many of you here today. For those of you who don't already know, my company Instant Impact are in-house recruitment and diversity experts. We build, run and support high-performing in-house recruitment functions by providing the team, technology, marketing and expertise that our clients need to hire the very best diverse talent. This is our 10th webinar today since the start of lockdown, and we've been really pleased with all of the feedback that we've received. Our content to date has mainly focused on how to drive diversity through recruitment, and we'll be continuing to do monthly webinars on diversity and inclusion, as well as focusing on other key topics that impact the world of HR and in-house recruitment more specifically. Today, we're going to be running through a topic that we focus on every day at Instant Impact, and that's how to build a high-performing in-house recruitment team. We expect the webinar to last no more than an hour, and we'll send through the recording afterwards, as always. If you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A box. We'll try to answer some of them as we go through, and if not, we'll have a dedicated period at the end for any questions. We're also going to send through a feedback form, and we really appreciate you spending 2 minutes to fill in the form so that we can continue to improve the webinars that we put on and put on webinars on the topics that are most interesting to our guests. So in terms of today, let me just slides. Sorry, I'm struggling with the slides today. Give me a second. Just going to have to come out and back in. Nice technical issue to start us off with. Sorry, guys. Give me 2 seconds. Right, I don't know what's happening here. Give me a second whilst we just sort this out.
Whilst Rob is dealing with his technical issue, I'll introduce myself. I'm Ben. I'm the delivery director here at Instant Impact. I work with all of our in-house recruitment teams, ensuring that we deliver excellent service and making sure that we set up those functions to be fit for purpose and to deliver all the objectives that we've agreed with our clients.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. I think we've solved it now. You would have thought after 10 webinars I'd be able to do far better than that. But I think we now have a structure ready to go. So in terms of order of play today, I'm going to kick us off by briefly covering when the right time is to build an in-house function, before then going into a bit more detail in terms of what we mean by high performance and the strategy that forms the building blocks of quality execution. Ben, who's just jumped in and introduced himself, is our recruitment director at Instant Impact and has also been head of talent globally for 3 different businesses. He's going to then share his experience of how to turn strategy into action and how to track performance. We're then going to finish with the Q&A that I mentioned before, and we hope that it's going to be a highly informative session and that you take away some immediately actionable insights. So to start us off then, in our experience, there are 3 main models of recruitment. We've got hiring manager led, where every hiring manager takes responsibility for their own recruitment. They will instruct agencies, advertise roles and review inbound applications or do a combination of all of the above. And they may also instruct agencies, as we said. We then got generalist HR, where a generalist member of the HR or talent team takes a lead on recruitment alongside their other responsibilities. And finally, we've got in-house recruitment that we're going to spend most of our time on today. In-house recruitment is where you have a specialist and dedicated recruitment person or team that works with your hiring managers to define their roles, use a multi-channel approach to attract and directly approach talent, and only instructs recruitment agencies where absolutely necessary. Typically, we see that for niche or very senior searches. My colleague Frankie is going to send around a link to an article that we've written that goes into more detail on the pros and cons of each model and the businesses that it's optimal for as a follow-up to this session. But the summary is that as a company grows or the number of hires needed each year increases, the ideal recruitment model will progress. And it will progress from being hiring manager led in the first instance through being generalist HR. And then ultimately, when you're making 20 plus hires a year, it will transition to becoming in-house. If we look at why that is, we can see a connection between high performance in each recruitment model and the pain points that companies experience when they become too big for their recruitment model. So if you bear with me, I've got a few slides here that run through this progression and outlines what we mean by high performance, and then also the pain factors that come in and pain points that come in if it's not working. So for any business making only a handful of hires every year, whether that's a startup or a boutique business with very low staff attrition, it doesn't make sense to have an HR function, let alone an in-house recruitment team. So having hiring managers lead it really is the only option and absolutely makes sense. It's cost effective and quick to hire because you aren't having to do much recruitment, and your hiring managers should know exactly what they're looking for. So they should be attracting the high quality that you and they need. Once the business starts to get a bit bigger though, it will experience at least one of the pain points that comes with hiring manager-led recruitment. The same reasons that it was the right model to start with will no longer be the case. Costs can start to spiral with agencies. If you consider a business making 20 hires a year with agencies, they'll be forking over typically anywhere between £150,000 and £200,000 a year to recruitment agencies to find them the right candidates. It can also become time consuming for hiring managers. They're doing more hiring now and having less time for their day job, which also leads to a number of other issues typically. Speed of hire, for example, there's just not enough time in the day, and potentially even worse than that. If you cut corners, there could be a quality of hire issue that no one wants. New pain points can also start to appear now as well, typically stemming from a lack of control. If you've got lots of different hiring managers leading the recruitment process, it's very difficult to have a consistent process. It's difficult to introduce data and reporting across the business. And it's also very difficult to focus on key strategic issues like diversity. And when you're experiencing any of these pain points, there are two options really. The first is to improve the existing model. So to look at how you can improve that hiring manager-led model. And the second is to change model. Once you're hiring at any sort of volume, it's going to be very difficult, we think, to address all of these pain points without changing model. At the very least, if the hiring managers are doing everything, it's either going to take them a long time or the agency bill will quickly get out of control. And when you've moved to a generalist HR model, you should be able to address all of these pain points that you're experiencing. And if not, you might be in such a high period of growth that you need to switch straight away to in-house. But let's look at the generalist HR setup first. Once you're in a generalist HR model, the HR manager can start to take on screening of applications, which will hopefully increase the number of direct hires that the business is making and save hiring managers time, They can also have more control over agency spend by operating a central PSL, and you can start working towards targets and KPIs that are beneficial for the business at large. You can introduce a basic applicant tracking system to increase control, implement a basic process, as well as data and reporting on those targets and KPIs. And by running things centrally, you can start looking at other strategic improvements, such as diversity. Once you've got to a business of 100 plus people in size or 20 plus hires per year, this model will also start to creep though, for very similar reasons as the hiring manager-led model started to creep in the first instance. So HR will become stretched as recruitment takes up more and more of their time. It becomes easier to use agencies than make direct hires, which is very costly. And with less time in HR, more responsibility typically becomes delegated back to the hiring managers, which can lead to the same issues we had before of losing control and focus on a clear and consistent process, especially around topics such as diversity, which makes it a lot more challenging to really make a positive impact there. And again, quality of hire can suffer. If you're experiencing any of those pain points and are operating at the volume where it starts to make commercial sense to have an in-house team, again, there are two different options. First off, we've got improve the existing model again, or second, we've got change model. As with moving from hiring manager-led to having generalist HR, there will be a volume of hiring where it makes sense for every business to bring their recruitment in-house. As an extreme example of that, I'm currently working with a business to create a solution for them. They're currently making over 10,000 hires per year using the generalist HR model. And due to the capacity of the HR team, they've had to devolve a lot of the hiring responsibility to hiring managers and are now suffering with an agency spend of over £50 million per annum. You might ask how they managed to get there, but it's actually an extreme example of something that we see a lot, when companies have the wrong recruitment model, it's very hard to change. The budget and control often lives with individual hiring managers whose objectives don't always directly align with the business as a whole. And HR often don't want the hot potato of recruitment. And when they do, department heads often don't want to give up the control that they already have. But the challenges that this company faces go well beyond cost. They're also feeling the pain of a lack of control over processes, a lack of data and reporting. And when bearing in mind that they're recruiting over 10,000 people a year, that's very problematic. It also means that they can't make meaningful change to their diversity or the profile of talent that they're bringing into the organization because they don't have a full oversight of what that looks like. So they know that they need to change model, which is something that we're discussing, supporting them on. And the recruitment success factors that we see then are actually pretty consistent across the board, but it's only really possible to achieve that high performance at scale with an in-house team. So let's have a look at that high performance in a little bit more detail. A high performance in-house team should be delivering all of those success factors, at least in the long term. And you'll know that you've got a high performing team when there are clear and consistent recruitment processes that are tracked and reported on in real time. When hiring managers find the recruitment process to be an enjoyable experience rather than a time drain, they should ultimately only be meeting the very best candidates for their roles and should be able to make the hires that they need when they need to. HR should trust the in-house recruitment team to deliver high quality results, such as speed of hire and support at the intersection of HR and recruitment in the pre-boarding and onboarding process. So you get a seamless experience throughout the full HR function. At least 80% of hires should be being made directly, and recruitment spend should consistently come in under budget, with agencies only used on those senior and niche searches that we talked about before, where those agencies add real value with their specific networks. The team is then part of key strategic initiatives such as diversity. They're reporting on key metrics and continually focusing on improving and getting better to deliver more back to the business. Ultimately, the business is hiring the high quality talent that it needs when it needs to. So that's the vision of a high performance in-house function. The focus today is how we get there. In our opinion, there are three core components to a high performing in-house recruitment function. We've got the strategy and management, the team, and then the marketing and technology that supports it. I'm going to be covering the strategy today before handing over to Ben, who's going to run through management, marketing, technology, people, and execution. With lots of different success factors, you need a clear strategy. We need to know which roles we're prioritizing. We need to know how to build the employer brand. We also need to know how we should balance speed of hire against the importance of diversity when those two things can often pull in different directions. And the list of those questions goes on. We suggest starting with what talent you want to bring into the organization and then working backwards from it. Because without knowing what a successful hire looks like, the other pieces of the puzzle really can't fall into place and you might be heading in the wrong direction with the changes that you're looking to make. So we start every new partnership by asking all key stakeholders in the hiring process, from CEO down, what they think makes a great hire at the organization. And where there's misalignment, it's critical to get everyone in a room to thrash it out, to make sure that we're hiring for the right cultural components for that business. And only when everyone is on the same page can you really start to build your recruitment strategy and ultimately your in-house engine. To build your strategy, you need someone who can set the direction and engage then with all of the senior stakeholders internally to make it happen. Introducing an in-house team is a big change program. And as one of our clients said, you need to jump onto the moving treadmill before you can turn up the pace. So you need to outline what you're trying to achieve and by when, which of the existing pain points you're going to tackle first, and how you're going to turn them into success factors, because simply you can't do everything at once. We believe that all of the success factors that we've gone through before and the high performance that we've described flow from setting up a high quality direct hiring model. Unless you're able to hire directly, you're not going to be able to reduce agency spend, increase speed, or impact diversity. You simply need that control of driving direct hires. So start by focusing on the roles that the business hires most often. This is where you're likely to find the quickest wins and make the biggest impact. It's also typically, for most companies that we come across, entry to mid-level hires, which should absolutely be being placed directly. And with the strategy in place, you're onto the first key component of a high-performing in-house recruitment function, the management. Recruitment, in our opinion, is a specialist skill set. The team needs to be well managed and motivated to deliver the results that you want. They also need the strategy and alignment to your business to make sure that they're heading in the right direction. That's easy with a large team delivering hundreds of hires, because you can have a specialist head of recruitment reporting into your HR director, who can then manage the team and provide the strategic direction that they need. But how can you do that at lower volume? There are a couple of ways that you can achieve that strategic direction in a smaller in-house recruitment function. Firstly, your HR director or head of talent may have experience and capacity leading hiring processes, so they could manage the function. You also might be forecasting massive growth, in which case your first recruitment hire could be a senior person with the capability of growing into a head of recruitment role, and therefore the ability to report into your HR director effectively from day one. Or you may need to look externally for that capability, which is where a partner like Instant Impact could potentially come in. That manager and person with the key strategic direction then has to start building the function. And with any luck, they'll have the expertise to do so. This is what Ben does day in, day out. So Ben, I'll pass over to you at this stage.
Thank you, Rob. Hopefully you can all hear me and see me loud and clear. Well, Rob's done a fantastic job there of summarizing some of the elements. And as we all know, that there really is no point in having, there's no use having a strategy or management without execution. And that's where hopefully my experience comes in, and we need our execution and the components of that to be firing, which in my experience kind of comes in two parts. The team, which I'll cover, and the marketing and technology that we use to enable that execution. So let's talk about the team. How big? So the first step is to determine the team that you need to execute the strategy that you've developed. There are two main considerations that you should have when you get to this part. The first, and Rob alluded to it earlier, is the hiring volume. It's not rocket science, but the more you hire, the bigger the team you'll need. And although it may look like a cost, it's actually a saving when compared to the other alternatives Rob mentioned before about the cost of agencies that can spiral out of control, as well as the time cost for hiring managers that you can save by having the right size team. Rob mentioned earlier that making 20 hires a year with agencies can cost somewhere between 150 to 200K. We've done correctly and executed properly, an in-house team will be more cost effective. We've got incidences with our clients where we've saved them over 50% versus cost on agencies versus the in-house team that we've developed for them. The second consideration is the frequency and the certainty of your hiring. Obviously, if you hire in peaks and troughs, or you're understandably cautious about the future, especially now with the COVID situation, you're going to need flexibility. So you can achieve that in a couple of ways. One way is by having a team that can deal with the troughs and using agencies for extra capacity where needed, or having a team that can deal with the peaks and having a plan for how you use their capacity elsewhere where there's no recruitment that's ongoing. Alternatively, you could look at contractors, but a word of caution on this part of the benefit of an in-house recruitment function is that they know you and your business well. So if you do go down the contractor route, be careful to ensure continuity of experience for your different teams. Just something to think about. The service level, look, this is really important. At Instant Impact, we typically set up our in-house recruitment functions to conduct the first round interviews on behalf of the hiring managers. This saves them time, and by making sure that they only need to interview 3 to 5 well-qualified candidates for the role, saving your hiring managers a lot of time. This is one of the pain points we come up against on a regular basis. The number of interviews, the disjointed process, and no clear process. This is something that with an effective in-house recruitment function that you can solve relatively quickly and easily. Obviously, a lot of this depends on the roles that you're recruiting for, but we would expect a recruiter to make 3 to 6 hires a month with this setup. An alternative model is to have the recruiters just doing the initial screening and the hiring managers doing all of their interviews from first, second, and beyond. With that model, you will deliver more hires, but you'll need to be very careful that it doesn't turn into a false economy with extra hire manager time being taken and the speed maybe not being quite so quick and the loss of control. What you then need to do is to make sure that you have that you hire the right team of internal recruiters, in-house recruiters. So what do the right recruiters look like? Well, once you've defined the setup and the team you want, the next step is to find them. Most businesses will make a wide range of different hires, from developers to operations to finance and marketing, as well as different international markets perhaps that you cover. So you need to have recruiters who have the agility to support in all of those areas and to train them on the different types of roles and locations that you want them to recruit for, unless they have all of that experience already. I think it's fair to say that recruitment doesn't have the best reputation as a profession. It's a highly commissioned and pressurized industry, which can all too often teach bad behaviors, playing candidates off against clients, pressurizing both parties to make a decision, working to inflate salaries, and the recruiter primarily working towards earning their own commission. When building an in-house team, you need to focus on a different set of motivations when looking for these people. It has to be about finding the right long-term fit for your business. When hiring an in-house recruiter, you need to be looking for someone who is happy to spend a lot of time on the phone and has the work ethic and influencing skills of an agency recruiter, whilst also being aligned to the culture, values, and vision of your business so they can add value there. You need to look for the rare recruiter who is commercial enough to understand what your company needs right now and in the future, but someone who is also tough enough to stand up to hiring managers when they don't follow the new defined process and strategy. It's a tough search, but you'll know it when you find it. And if you're growing a bigger in-house team, you clearly need to make sure that it works well as a unit and that their skills complement each other. Lots to consider. So moving on to marketing and technology. One of the key components of your strategy is then the execution. So you've got the strategy, you've now found your in-house recruitment team. Now it's about executing. So the team need to be given the right tools. I'm a big Formula One fan, and despite how entertaining it might be, there's no use having Lewis Hamilton driving a lawnmower. Yeah. So it's really important that your in-house recruitment team have all the right tools and access to all the right technology. I could go on for ages about this element, but I think what's really important is I talk about some of the core principles. Firstly, you've got to make sure you have a high quality applicant tracking system, or ATS. You've got to make sure it's being used correctly, and where appropriate, that it's fully integrated with your HRIS systems. It should be set up to automate manual processes, saving time, ensuring consistency, and provide all the data and reporting that you could ever want. As well as it needs to also enable you to pipeline future talent. This is an area that a lot of companies, you don't have this when you have agencies, when you're relying on them. So pipelining future talent, saving you crucial time for those hiring needs further down the line. An effective ATS system being used properly will enable you to do that. You also need to make sure that as we get a bit more sophisticated, we can get into the world of candidate relationship management systems to ensure that your talent pipelining effectively, as I mentioned before, across all your core roles and building your employer brand with talent that you may want to hire in the future. You should also, where possible, utilize technology in your assessment, whether that's through culture fit profiling or skills assessment. There's a lot of useful technology out there that can really save time and add significant value and enable you to find the best candidates. And you also want to track the candidate experience. one of the things you probably have decided, if you do decide to hire an in-house recruitment team or build one, is that the candidate experience is all important. And we recommend using NPS or Net Promoter Score in this instance. You also want to make sure that you have all the appropriate marketing channels that you need to be successful. That could typically include something like LinkedIn recruiter licenses for reaching out to the passive market and advertising, and more importantly, a bespoke plan of which job boards you're going to advertise on for which roles, and an approach to social media, and of course, generating those all important and valuable internal referrals. And of course, one other component to consider is you want to empower the team to recommend new channels of attracting candidates or sourcing candidates. But they've got to make sure that this builds ROI on any new investment. So you want a commercially minded in-house recruiter. So what have we run through? So we've run through strategy and management, which Rob ran through in a bit of detail. We've spoken about the team in a little bit of focus, what size team, what to look for, and then we've spoken about marketing and technology, and obviously, of course, the high performance areas. But achieving high performance requires continual improvement and management. You need to have all of the data on the elements of high performance, as well as anything you'd like in addition for the purpose of your business. And you need to focus on continuing to strive for better in every area, whilst tailoring your focus to the areas of most importance for your business.
Well, thanks, Ben. Well,
thank you, Rob.
A bit of a whistle-stop tour through the high performance that you can achieve through in-house recruitment, and our belief that as you achieve any or reach any sort of volume in your hiring, it's going to be the optimal model for you. Thanks, Ben, for running through that. For really fantastic overview of the team and marketing and technology that comes with it. And I'm going to finish off today with a Q&A. I'm going to kick things off, Ben, by asking you a question, which is, so we've talked about high performance and the need to strive towards achieving that as you're putting an in-house function in place. Have you seen any common mistakes or things maybe not go as well as you'd want, and how can people make sure to avoid those traps as they try to build a high performance in-house team?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Rob. I've seen a couple of typical incidents where issues have arisen or challenges. One is that, back to the point of hiring the right internal recruiters, when you decide to go in-house, it's really important that you hire someone that still wants to be a recruiter and doesn't purely want to focus on strategy. I think that's one of the really key elements of executing an effective in-house recruitment team, that you really hire the right people. The second challenge, and this is sometimes a bit more complicated than simply hiring an individual, is understand all of the business buying into the new strategy and taking that shift away from agency reliance or hiring manager kind of independence on hiring who they want, when they want, how they want, and really aligning the whole business and getting behind the internal recruiter and the management structure around that in-house recruitment function, around the new processes. I've seen, and we've had incidences and my previous experiences where taking it away from in-house, I worked with one particular business where our agency spend was north of £250,000 a year. I joined, we decided to bring it all in-house, and it took a lot of influencing kind of hiring managers buying into and fully understanding why we'd made that shift and the value it would add to them, not having to interview everybody, screen all of the CVs, and kind of making sure they understood it was now about being aligned to the business strategy. So hiring the right people, important, but aligning the whole business around the strategy, especially hiring managers, is really important.
Great. And we've had another question in here from Ben. So if you're hiring a recruiter from an agency background, often they'll have been experienced working in one very particular type of roles over and over again, whereas as an in-house function, our company, you need to be able to work on lots and lots of different roles across lots of different business units. How can you ensure that anyone that you hire from that background can then come in-house and be more of a generalist in terms of the roles that they're running?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question. I think there's a couple of things you can do. I think everybody has, if you're going to hire an in-house recruiter, and I think Rob mentioned earlier, Rob, you're talking about starting with core roles, the ones that you hire on a really frequent basis. So if you are going to hire an internal recruiter from a specialist background, I would make sure that their background is aligned to the core roles you hire the most frequently, because that's where they're going to have the most impact. And that's where their recruitment, their experience comes most into play. How you would turn them a bit more into a generalist is I would really probe on their recruitment practice, how they run processes. It's very, very rare nowadays for super niche, bespoke recruiters to exist, unless you're doing something super high tech like machine learning or something like that. So I would probe around their processes, how they run their recruitment processes, how they source their candidates. And it's really all about their work methodology, because that, if that's good, is transferable across any role. And if they've got good working practices and good methodology, they should be able to pick up any role. And of course, the added question, I was a tech recruiter in my time, and I think it's where you don't know, hire someone who has the courage and the confidence to ask for help, and maybe where they're not so clear, just to speak to the hire manager for more clarity. That's really important.
Yeah, and another question we have in terms of, so we've talked a fair bit about hiring people from an agency recruitment background. In that background, again, you're often working with quite high levels of commission and other sorts of incentives. How can you position the benefits of working in-house, and why do people want to make that shift? And then also in the position where you're managing a team of in-house recruiters, how do you motivate them and get the best out of that team that you've got in place?
Yeah, great question, Rob. So if you are hiring an agency recruiter to move in-house, I would really probe on their motivations as to why. In most cases, it would be because they either don't like the concept of business development anymore in some cases, and they want to go down the path of building longer lasting relationships. We all know that agency recruitment can be very transactional. We mentioned before about just wanting the next commission check as an agency recruiter. So I'd really probe on their motivations and why they want to go in-house, first of all. That's really important. I think once you've decided that this person has all the right motivations for wanting to move in-house, and I wouldn't proclaim to tell you what motivations are good or bad motivations, but you want someone who is aligned to what your business objectives are. You want someone who's done some research into your business, understands a little bit from the outside looking in what you're about, what you're looking to achieve. Once you have them and motivating them, it all comes back to the interview process initially. If you've conducted a thorough, effective interview process for any role, if you've done that bit well, you'll know what motivations somebody has, what they're looking to achieve, what their personal and professional objectives are. And it's just about, when you've got them in-house, plugging into those motivations and knowing exactly what they are. Frequent reviews. With our teams, I conduct weekly one-to-ones with teams. We have monthly kind of performance sort of presentations where we talk about the month and what objectives we met, and then quarterly kind of actual competency reviews, performance reviews, and really understanding where they need to develop, what's next for them, and how they can achieve their own objectives within the business.
Great. We've had one last question, which I'll take, and then any more questions, guys. We have had one more through, actually, guys. So put any more questions on the Q&A, and we'll see those off before finishing. The question I'd had in before was around marketing and technology. There's so many different tools out there. How do I choose the ones to use and where to focus? And I think what I'd say there to anyone looking at that is the first thing, as Ben talked about before, is getting the right ATS in place. So there are so many different applicant tracking systems on the market, lots of them very similar to others. I think that the most important thing is that you get a tool that you're happy with and set it up so that you can be successful on it. So making sure that you have the automation and are really enabling the team that you have not to get bogged down in admin, but instead focus on real value add activity within the function. So that's the first piece. And then when you're looking at the different marketing channels to use, it's really about considering the roles that you're recruiting for and analysing the data that you have come back in from the success of it. So which job boards are working well for your roles in each of your different geographies, understanding your local markets and experimenting with different forms of investment, but then not also being blind to just letting those investments increase over time. So really looking at making sure and tracking that your marketing spend is being well used, and that as a function, your in-house function is targeted on cost per hire and really being a cost-effective value add to the organisation. We've got another question in. So how can you effectively set goals for an in-house team when hiring requirements change really frequently? There's another question in for you, Ben.
That's a great question. Well, I think if I just take it back a step, I think when you hire your in-house recruiter, it's really important that you explore how comfortable they are in a little bit of ambiguity. A lot of agency recruiters you'll see out there really don't operate well in ambiguity. They like black and white. They like vacancy, CVs, process, hire, commission. So when you do hire your in-house recruiter, it's really important you explore how comfortable they are in a world of ambiguity, because in any business, hiring can be like all guns blazing and then COVID can happen, or some funding is a bit delayed, or hire managers off sick and therefore can't onboard anybody. How you set these targets, I think first of all, it's in-house recruiters, it's not as black and white as hiring targets. It's about the overall objectives of the in-house recruitment function. So is it about time to hire? Is it about speed of hire, cost per hire? Look at other metrics that you can control when you are hiring and target them on those, rather than just 3 hires this month, please, 5 hires this month, please, because there is much more ambiguity in that world. And I think it's back to the motivations. If you've plugged into their motivations and they feel like they're learning, they're developing and they're achieving and that they're contributing, targets, vacancies coming on and coming off won't really knock them off their kilter. If you've set the right objectives for the function and for them, and you've plugged into their motivations, that should be enough to target them.
Great. Well, guys, thanks so much for those questions. I hope you found that to be a useful session. Really appreciate everyone joining today and taking time out of busy schedules. A bit of housekeeping from us before we finish. So as I said at the beginning, we'll be sending around a feedback form. We really would appreciate it if you can spend 2 minutes to fill that in. We've got a couple of upcoming webinars. So we've got one later this week on an introduction to diversity-centric recruitment that we're running with the FSB. And then we've got another on the 12th of November where we're looking at recruitment budgets and running through everything you need to know, both in terms of putting it together and then ultimately in terms of being as cost effective as a function as we can. A range of other resources on our website as well, so please do check them out. Really hope you enjoyed today's session. Do get in touch if you've got any specific feedback or if you'd like to discuss anything in more detail, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars.
Thank you all.